or I'm trusting God for the fruit of the womb, and you keep throwing shades around me and, we've been married X number of years. Don't even ask me any questions. If you're praying for me, pray for me in your closet, in the privacy of your home.
Yeah.
Don't come and be touching my stomach.
Yeah.
You don't know whether the day you're touching my stomach was the day I had a miscarriage.
Right.
People need to stop. They need to stop.
That's true.
People deal with so much. This is an issue that touches me to the core.
Yeah.
There's so many hurting women out there.
Welcome to the show. I am your host, Anya Fombat, and I spark the hard conversations that challenge questionable cultural and societal norms that threaten the well-being of the African community. And I also share stories about growing up as Africans in Africa and in the diaspora. I strongly believe that normalizing open discussions and sharing experiences, whether good or bad, will not only make you find your voice, but will broaden your sense of purpose and empower others to do the same. So if you have ever tried challenging certain African cultural and societal doctrines, or if you have ever felt like it is about time that we confronted these issues in our African community and do better as a people, or even if you have always been interested in learning about the experiences of other Africans growing up in Africa and the diaspora, then you are in the right place. Welcome to Living African. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Living African podcast with your host, Anya. So today I have with me two special people. I have Victor and Carine Njoh, all the way from Oklahoma. And I really don't want to, talk too much about these people because you would get to know them from their story, but I just want to read a brief introduction about them. So Victor is a third child. That's the first of a set of twins from a family of 8, born in Kumba, Cameroon, to Mr. Christopher Njoh and Mrs. Ruth Njoh, née Tabot, both of blessed memory. He relocated to the U.S. in 1996, where he attended SWOSU, which is a Southwest Oklahoma State University in Weatherford, and graduated in 2003 with a doctorate in pharmacy. Carine is the fifth of 6 children, born in Boya to Mr. John Day and Hilda Day née Asanji. She relocated to the U.S. in 2000, where she started college at SWOSU as well, and she graduated in 2010 with a doctorate in pharmacy. Victor and Carine met at SWOSU, obviously, and at the time, Victor was president of the Southwestern International Students Association, and so was instrumental in helping Carine navigate the school system. Their relationship kicked off a couple of years later, and they got married in 2008, and that's where their story begins. So I want to welcome you, Victor and Carine, to our platform. It's truly my honor to have both of you here. How are you doing today?
We're doing great, and it's a pleasure.
Thank you
for having me.
Thank you so much. I really look forward to this conversation, and what actually basically started or sparked this conversation was the book that you wrote, Carine, which is Jehovah Has Healed. And, I have read that book a couple of times, and I really had it on my spirit to have this conversation with you both to really give insight and perspective to your own experience, to our community. So I really look forward to that. Now, you have been married for, I would say, over 14 years. And so I really wanted to throw it a little bit back, and basically at the start of your story, right? When you guys met each other, what did you both see or predict or wish your life to be when you got married? And, what were basically your hopes and your dreams? Everybody has this life planned ahead of them, right? Funny enough. So what was that? I'll start with you, Carine.
For me, I'd say it was just we got married, kids, to have 2 or 3 kids, raise them, just see them running around. And that was my dream, and live happily ever after.
Right. What about you, Victor?
Well, pretty much the same, but I just wanted to be wherever she was, pretty much. I told her when I met her that if I'm not fortunate enough to get married to you, I want to live on the same street or in the same neighborhood as
you. Right? Wow, that's actually very romantic.
Well,
yeah.
I ended up with him.
Right? Oh, that's so cute. That's nice. So now, you get married and, of course you start, trying to have kids. And so in this phase in your life, I feel like this, and also based on the book, that's where the first challenge happened, right? The first challenge in your life. Now, I want us to thankfully, both of you are healthcare professionals. So I want us to really explain clinically, what you both went through with the pregnancy. And I know that you had sort of a complicated first pregnancy. That was the second trimester. That's when you discovered that, well, from the start, you had low progesterone levels. So what exactly, based on, what you were advised, I'm not trying to get like clinical advice because we're not OBGYNs, so this is strictly based on experience and maybe research, but these are based on, they're not like factual, in 100% factual. So from the experience that both of you had, what exactly could be the cause or what could be the risk factors for that in pregnancy, and what could be the outcome of that?
I talk specifically about, as far as costs, I'm not sure, but I'm going to speak more on the risk associated with that. And we're talking about the first pregnancy, correct?
Yeah.
So my progesterone levels were low. And so they had to augment that because it's supposed to help prevent early miscarriage. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I needed extra progesterone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. And, so from the scare that you had with that, according to the book, there were a series of events, that happened. I would imagine that, just the pain that you were feeling and every other thing that added to it. How did both of you manage to, sustain basically the whole experience to when you had Jessie? Like, I had a high risk pregnancy and, I had like light bleeding as well at the start, and I had severe pain. My whole pregnancy was painful, but mine was just the pelvic pain because I was really big. My belly was very big and I was very tiny. So like the weight and everything on my pelvis was really, really bad. But every day was literally like, I was just being so cautious. I was so anxious. I actually had panic attacks. It was so hard for me to just, the whole experience was just traumatizing to me, not necessarily only painful, but, just mentally. So how did both of you like sustain that whole pregnancy, with every other thing that was going on?
I would say, I think we just took one day at a time. Like, this was the first. And so I wouldn't say my faith, of course, we both trust in God, believe in God. But at that point, my faith was not where it was at right now.
Yeah.
So I hoped for the best, live one day at a time. Was it scary? Very scary, especially with those major episodes that I was having. And, you just never know, is the baby in there or is the baby not there,
Yeah.
So it was very, very scary. And I mean, there were days that I'll just cry,
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't know what more to do.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Victor? Like, how was the whole experience, especially as a first-time father? How was it for you?
She hid it from me.
Right.
So, pretty much most of the time, I was there with her. We went for almost every appointment that she had, but underlying issues or the more serious issues that she was dealing with, I knew very little about. So, and I don't know if she was protecting me in that regard or if she just didn't know exactly how I would react. Some of the things I only realized at the end that this is exactly what she was going through.
Yeah, I would imagine. And I would also imagine, after having Jesse, who was premature, I would imagine how very fragile it was, for him and just for everyone involved in his life. And, I'm just thankful to God that he pushed through and made it through, and you guys were right there by his side. So, we thank God for his life and everything. And so now I want to, digress a little bit and talk about Reme, who's your mom, right? And this is directed to you, Victor. I believe I met her once. I believe I don't remember, but, I really want to honor her life and her memory for a moment. So can you just give us a picture of who she was?
My mom was a very caring and loving person, kind-hearted.
Yeah.
Her doors were open to one and all. And she treated everybody that she came across, especially the kids. She treated every single one of them as her own.
Yeah.
If you came into a household, you could never tell which ones were her biological kids and which ones were just either nephews or nieces or just some random kid that she decided to take from somewhere and to help raise. So that was who my mom was. Mm-hmm. And having her when we had Jesse, because she was here when we had Jesse, was really helpful because at the time Carine was in school and I was at work. So when Jesse finally came home, we really needed somebody to be at home with him. And that was the role that she played. So, and she loved Jesse as much as she would any other kid and even as much as her own. Because I remember how many times she had requested that we should allow her to take Jesse to Cameroon.
Sounds like a grandma right there.
Yeah, we would not let that happen. It just so happens that the ways of God are not the ways of man.
Yeah.
And so my mom really didn't get a chance to watch Jesse grow because she was frightened. The very first time she saw Jesse, none of us in our family had ever seen a premature kid.
Yeah.
So when she saw Jesse for the very first time, he was tiny. Yeah. He had all these tubes and wires around him. Really, sometimes when you went and saw him in the incubator, you had to really look close to see the child amongst all of those wires and tubes and everything. Yeah. So when my mom saw him for the first time, she was frightened. She really didn't know what to expect. She really didn't think that he was going to make it. And so I would have really wished for my mom to be around to see the Jesse today that was that little kid in the incubator. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I always remember her as, very calm. I felt like you took after her. And you actually look like her as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing that. And as a new parent, I can definitely appreciate how much having help is very valuable. I can't get enough help. That's all I can say, Yep. And my child was not premature. So I can only imagine how resourceful and helpful she was for you guys, especially with Jesse and 2 pharmacists with the crazy schedules and just everything, it's just mind blowing. But at the same time, it must be really heartbreaking for someone like her who is always willing to help people, not being able to help as she wanted to help because of, her own health that was deteriorating, and then it's like she was literally trying to help you guys, but then the person who was supposed to be helping you guys cannot help herself. And then the person you guys had to rely on help from is now dependent on you for help, So I can not imagine what you guys were going through at that time. In addition to the fact that Carine at that time was expecting baby Nasia, who, the pregnancy was just unbelievably tough on her and everything that was happening around, and when I read the book, every time I asked myself, why would God let something like that happen? Carine, I know I've had this conversation with you before, and, I'm Christian, right? And I believe I'm spiritual. I think everybody is spiritual. Now it depends on what they believe in, right? Even atheists are spiritual. I think so. But there's just certain things that, about my own beliefs, my own religion, or my own spirituality, or my belief in God, that sometimes I question. And I feel like every human being questions at some time, and there was a part of your book, if you mind me reading just a statement. And, I really want to get more insight from you guys, because I just still don't understand, why certain things happen. Like, as a parent, if Jesse's hurting, you're not going to let him hurt even more. You know what I mean? And if God is our father, why? You know what I mean? So, You said we often ask a lot of questions as to why certain things happen and where God was at the time. God was there. He pulled me out of that valley of the shadow of death, And this is way early on into the book. You were already talking about God pulling you out of the valley of the shadow of death when you hadn't even hit rock bottom yet, So I just wanted to understand, how do we may never find answers, right? But how do we find answers that console ourselves in that moment that we feel like, where's God in all of this? And why would he let all of this happen? You were, taking care of your mother. I'll just say mother because she was a mother to both of you, who was sick. And then you had a tough pregnancy, and then your mom died. And then, you literally were about to lose your baby girl a couple of months later. Like, in a space of 1 to 2 years, you're bearing two people that were really close to you with every other thing that was happening. So how will you even speak to that with God, to find answers that were going to console you at that time?
In that moment, there's different things that draw us closer to God. And it was in my quest for answers that I honestly I drew closer to him, and the more I drew closer to him, the most important thing when you're going through situations is when you lose your peace of mind, a lot is messed up. And so I was searching, even though I was searching for answers, in the midst of searching for those answers, I was able to find peace. And I know it sounds funny that, okay, here I am, I'm finding peace, in God. Sometimes people, okay, like you said, he's a father. How can a father do this to his children? And I think I reiterated that in the book, that, when man fell, sin came into the world, bad things happen. Bad things happen to good people as well. And the Bible says the enemy came to kill, to steal, and to destroy. And I believe that.
Yeah.
There are things that happen and he allows them to happen. That verse in the Bible that says everything works together for the good of them that love the Lord. That is where things like this come in play. Because you see a situation where there are people who've gone through the same thing that I've gone through, if not worse. We may or may not know them. And here I am standing today. Some of them probably went crazy, are in whatever home, mental facilities and stuff like that, And for me, I had to hang on to God, and he turned everything around for my good. To me, it has become more like a ministry. I see people, it's almost like the burdens of people who go through stuff like this. It's like I can feel it in every core of my being, There are times I go to the place of prayer, it's not even for me, but for people going through certain situations. And I will not have been in that position had it not been my experiences.
Right.
I don't know but again, that question, there's some things that I No matter how many times I ask, I even stop asking, you will not get answers to everything. I believe there's a heaven and there's a hell.
Yeah.
And there's something that I will only know when I cross over.
Right.
Maybe the glory is going to be so bright that I won't even be able to ask anything. So that's just life. And we got to buckle up and get the right ammunition in order to go through life.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. Victor, do you have anything to add?
You remember. What? You remember.
You remember.
Yes. Pretty much your experiences in life set you up for what you're going to go through in life. And when I say you remember, there's a portion in the Bible that says, bring up your children in the way of the Lord so that when they grow older, they will not forget. Mm-hmm. So as much as when you're looking at from Jesse to now Nasia and asking the question that how do you say God pulled you from that valley when you were not even hit rock bottom yet? As Christians, we're brought up to know that God is a father who is loving, he's caring, he always takes care of us. And so that is something that I believe we were taught as we were growing up. Mm-hmm. And so it's at the back of your mind that, for example, if you take the prodigal son in the Bible, mm-hmm. you know, when he went out and wasted all the fortunes and all the stuff that his father had given him, and he fell and hit rock bottom, he remembered that he has a father who is loving and caring and who would take him back probably just as a servant, not even as a son, but would take him back as a servant and would treat him in a manner that is better than where he currently is. And so when you find yourself as a Christian, like you rightly said, almost everybody has something that they believe in. Mm-hmm. And so when you find yourself as a Christian in a position where it's not normal or usual for you and it's difficult for you to be dealing with, you always remember that your Father in heaven cares much about you. And when you turn to him and put your problems to him, he would always find a way to lift you up. You know, I remember perfectly after Nasia and the pastor at church, we were all at church and we were sitting in the balcony, and he asked us to stand, and he said something to the effect of that, look at these people who are going through a lot, because Nasia passed about 7 months after my mom, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. you know, and he said, but here they are in church. You know, he said something to that effect. And the reason we were there was simply because we knew that was the only place where we could find peace. That was the only place where we had hope. That was the only place where we knew that we could be comforted. And that is from remembering who God is.
Yeah. That's very powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, just having that ability to remember and go back to the root of, you know, who you are in Christ is very important, you know, even though at that time it's like,
it's hard.
Yeah, it's. So thank you very much for sharing that. Now, taking it a few steps back, like, okay, Reme died and Victor, you went to bury her in Cameroon, and Carine has another emergency to have baby Nasia. So when you came back and you realized that, you know, you guys may have been celebrating the wrong thing in Cameroon, you know, I just want to understand, like, how did you really feel when you came back to that news that even though baby Nasia was born, it was an APGAR score, right? I think that's what you... Yes. So she wasn't like 100% healthy, you know, she had a very low APGAR score. And Carine, if you can explain the APGAR score, or Victor, you can also explain that as well, how she was born. When you discovered that, like, how did you really feel?
Me or her?
You.
Well, when the news came that Nasia was born, that was 3 days after we buried my mom.
Yeah.
You know, so we were in the village at the time. Me and my siblings who had all traveled from Europe, we were all in Cameroon. And, African tradition, they will do a burial and then they'll come 1 year later or so to do a cry die.
Yeah.
So, but my uncle said since most of us were abroad, they decided that we should just do the burial and the cry die at once to prevent us from coming back a year later for that ceremony. So 3 days after we had buried my mom was the day that we were supposed to do the cry die. And early that Monday morning, they were preparing to do the cry die. And I got a phone call and said Carine had the baby. And it was instant jubilation because at the time, we didn't know it was a baby girl, for that matter. It was instant jubilation right there, and then they named her after my mom.
Yeah,
they named her after my mom. So, but then as the day went on, I started getting more details. Spoke to her cousin who was here, and her cousin said, well, you pretty much have about a week to 10 days left in Cameroon. Why don't you just stay in Cameroon and then you come back when you're ready to come back? Pretty much was trying to say there's really not much that you're going to change if you come back. But going back, Nasia was born in the same hospital as Jessie. And because Jessie had been in the hospital for over 7 weeks, we had developed a rapport with some of the nurses. And there was one in particular that we had a very good relationship with.
Yeah.
So I called her and I just said, give it to me without any sugarcoating. What is going on? She said, I need you here yesterday. Yes. She told me, she said, I need you here yesterday. When I got off the phone with her, then at that time, we were still buying tickets through travel agents. So I called the travel agent and I said, I need to be back in the United States. And so when I got back here, I saw Carine, I saw Nasia, and the honest truth is that I was numb. Because like you said, African men tend not to cry at funerals.
Yeah.
In Cameroon, one of my aunties had told me, she said, go to Cameroon and bury your mom. When you come back, you can find time to cry. So I did that, And so when I came back, I saw the baby and then I saw Carine. I had no feeling, none. And it was that way until Eliana was born.
Wow. Did you have any conversations with God?
No, but he revealed himself to me because questions that I had were answered after Eliana was born.
Yeah, right.
Yes, because when I came back and the story was narrated to me exactly what happened, I blamed myself. I said, if I was here and not in Cameroon, then I don't think this would have happened.
Yeah.
Yes, I carried that blame with me until Eliana was born, because when she was born, I was here.
Yeah.
When she was born under exactly the same circumstances with me being here.
Right.
So it was after she was born, then God revealed to me that there are certain things that you cannot control.
Yeah.
As a human being, you're limited. There are certain things that you cannot control. And he told me, or he revealed to me, that those things that you cannot control, leave them up to me and I'll take care of it.
Yeah. Surrender, right?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So just to give the audience perspective, and, if anybody really wants to know the details of everything, Carine could not have been more detailed in this book, so I'm just trying to touch a few parts of the story, but the story is pretty intense and very, very detailed. So if you really want to know exactly what went on, you can grab a copy. I will have the link in the show notes portion of this episode, and you can grab the book on Amazon or in different locations in Africa. So just to give the audience perspective, Carine, can you please explain Nasia's condition when she was born with regards to her APGAR score and everything?
Okay, the APGAR score is a term that's used in the medical field when a child is born and the rating is between 1 to 10. And they would check the baby at 1 minute and I think 5 minutes. And so usually a score that's 7, 8, 9 means the baby is healthy.
Mm-hmm.
However, Nasia's score, I believe it was a 2.
2, yeah.
Something like that, yeah, if I remember, yeah. So which meant, and it's checking heart rate, did the baby cry, and all those different things.
Yeah. So she was basically let's just say if a layman wanted to picture her, right? Can we say she was, I'm trying to find the word. I know healthcare is A&O times 3, right? But that's alert and oriented. So was she brain dead? Is that fair?
I think that's an appropriate way to put it, I would say. Yeah, because, lack of oxygen would do that.
Yeah,
so pretty much, I think that's, in sum, I think that's just, for anyone to just understand what it was.
Yeah.
That's good. I would say that, yes.
Okay. And she was brain dead, and she was like that for about 7 months, right?
Yeah. Yeah, about 7 to 8 months, yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for clarifying that. Now, in your book, when you wrote about depression and, just how you were dealing with everything. I mean, I know you wrote a lot about like how you were dealing with things, and we're yet to hear about Victor's. But kind of reminded me of, my parents. When, like, I've had a previous episode before, and, I have a brother who, he was born normal, and, I believe he had a seizure like 2 weeks later, and, that's where everything went down the drain, and he became paraplegic, and, he's never been able to walk, and he's basically special needs. And, well, the audience can go to the episode to listen to that. I forgot what episode that is. But, I had a conversation with my parents, and, back then in the 90s and in Africa as well, it was pretty brutal in every aspect, because it was a new thing. Not many people, people have headaches, malaria and everything. Not many people have seizures, even if they did, but it wasn't even something that people really understood. And then everyone wanted to have an input as to, what could possibly be happening to him. And of course, the kids like us, we were very young back then, and we had questions. We could not understand why my brother could not play with us, why he cannot walk, why he's not talking back to us when we're talking. And my parents themselves, they actually, it impacted them individually and also their marriage, and, talking about depression, my mom was out of it. Like, she was just going crazy, and so, but then that was like a first experience that they both had, right? And that was with my brother. My brother's the last. Now, you guys had been through so much already, and then, you had Nasia, and then you had to bury her because she passed in such a short time. You guys had so much that happened to you. How did you handle that? First of all, how did that impact you, especially as a couple? I know, Carine, you had explained in detail what you went through. And Victor, you were basically numb, even though I think there's more to that. I honestly feel like there's more to that. So please feel free to, add more insight. But how did you even, as I'm thinking as two retail pharmacists as well in America, I would say you guys probably did not even have like consistent help. How we will have that in Africa back home, How did you guys just get everything together, individually, professionally, and even as a couple, because I know so many people who have divorced because of things like this. So how did that, how did you get everything together? I'm just leaving the floor open. Anybody who's touched to speak,
let me speak. Because like you said, as a pharmacist, you know how it is in retail.
Yeah.
And, even if they give you off for, I guess I was at that point where I wasn't going to, and this is not saying anybody who does this, it's wrong or anything. If you need to take, what's that long-term assistance? Is it family?
FMLA.
FMLA
or a sabbatical.
or something. Yeah. You can always, take some time off. But for me, I was at that point where it's like I needed a busy schedule. Maybe it was my way of escape, because if I sat at home and like you think our African community, we think depression is a made up word. It's not. Depression is so real, and I always say it's a game of, it's the mind, and when we entertain those thoughts and it comes in and comes in and comes in, you just find yourself in a dark hole. And so with working, I think, and that's when I was also deepening in my relationship with God. So I was so busy with work, with church. He was working and still works overnights. So when I look back, and I'm going to confess to you, I was going to read this book before coming for this interview, but I still couldn't. Yeah. That's why I said it's all God, like the way he brought to memory certain things that I had pretty much buried. Yeah. I don't know if I can really sit. I will still need his grace to read the book myself again, So when I think about how did we even do it, like God had to have been watching over us. And like I said, even like the least of, I don't know about him, but the least of my worries at the time was my marriage. Like I honestly did not even, I had a husband at home, but I don't know, it's like there's just so much going on. I go to work, I come back, I have this kid I have to take care of. We keep turning, it shifts between us. Home health, it has to be restructured. You can't depend on that. So it was me and him. He'll get off work, he doesn't go to sleep, he'll stay up taking care of the kid, and then I come home. Jesse was at school. Keep that in mind. We had to help him with homework. He had his own mini activities that he had to do. And so it was so much like, my escape, like God, that's why when anybody says anything about the God I serve, it almost like makes me get very, it's like a sensitive spot for me because I know what I went through and I know that without him, it was all God. I cannot it's not like, Carine was so brave. It is in our weakness that, his strength comes upon us. And I was broken, and I would be so down that I would pick up my Bible and read, and then energy is going to come back up. I will feel strength. I would, listen to a sermon and I'm up it again. Yeah. So I knew that not even my family, nobody, I could not find peace anywhere else, but in God. Yeah. So, and he helped my marriage really, like you said. I've seen statistics out there, they said the number one, like I read something about the statistics of divorced parents. I can't remember the exact thing, but losing a child was one of them. And so I would say we were graciously helped by God. That's it. Yeah, that's really very powerful, because it's like I still marvel at your story. Sometimes I'm just speechless, because I'm not even trying to put myself in your shoes because I would never, ever, ever wish for that. And I would never, ever understand, again, when I look at my own life, I have one child, one-eye child who is healthy, thank God. And I've been struggling. I remember I was having a conversation with one of my girlfriends one time, and I was just praying to God, like, I'm at the verge of a mental breakdown. Like I cannot handle one bad news. Like if I don't even know how I would handle an additional bad news or anything. Because every day I wake up, it's like I'm so sleep deprived. I'm so stressed. I don't even know how people have multiple kids and how they do it. But then again, it all boils down to God, right? God's grace. As a believer, I believe, God is the ultimate help. Sometimes you don't even understand how you do certain things, but as long as you have God, it's like it gets done. And one thing that really touched me was like all through, I knew about Baby Nasia, but I honestly did not know about like the timing. I did not know about baby Eliana. I didn't even know like when I was reading your book, I was like, oh yeah, I'm like very good friends with your sister, right? With Joyce. I'm like, yeah, I know a lot of this. But when I read the book, I was like, whoa, like I had no clue that you were going through that. But
on social media, you were such a radical for Christ. You still are, actually, And what was really admirable was that you were so strong and open about your faith publicly, not letting people really know, not that you did it intentionally per se, but like a lot of people saw your strength and your advocacy for Christ publicly without really knowing what you were going through privately, and I really want to thank you for showing that strength and also telling your story at God's timing and at your own timing as well. So Victor, back to you. So how did you manage all of that emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and even physically?
Well, I mean, for both of us, I think what really helped us was the fact that we never talked about it. Yes, we never talked about it.
To each other?
Yes.
That's interesting because sometimes actually it could turn out the other way, Sometimes it could just be like this thing that you're keeping inside and then one day it blows up and it's like, whoa,
We've never talked about it. Never. We've never sat down to have a conversation between ourselves to say, okay, why did this happen to us?
Yeah.
And not somebody else. We've never really talked about it. But dealing with it, like she said, you find something that keeps you busy. So she went to work, which I also went to work. And then the other thing which I did was I found a hobby that I enjoyed so much, which is gardening.
Yes.
I threw myself into gardening to the point where I would come home from work. As soon as I pulled the car in the garage, if Jesse did not have to go to school, once I pull the car in the garage, the first thing I do is I go to the garden before I even walk into the house.
Oh, wow.
And I tell people all the time, I said, if you're going through stuff and you need something to help you out, put your hand in the dirt. Just put your hand in the ground, put a seed in the ground, and watch and nurture that seed grow. It will do amazing things to your psyche.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you very much for that advice. I can definitely testify. I've tasted some of your peppers. So I got them from Carine. So that's very true. Yeah, the gardening definitely helped more than you. It helped some of us too. So thank you so much for that. There's a portion of the book, again, that I really want to read. And I hope that this is kind of like a message to someone going through something and something that you wrote, Carine. You said, you can take charge of your atmosphere and be the thermostat, not the thermometer. I've also learned that circumstances may not be favorable around you, but it's how you respond to those situations that will determine whether you sink or float. Enough said, actually. I just wanted to add that to our conversation because that's definitely a reminder that I needed when I was reading. I actually underlined it. And I feel like it's a reminder that someone will need, even though it's kind of hard as well, especially in that kind of situation. And then you spoke about, you had the phrase bury. I don't know you were just talking and you said bury, and that stood out to me because you were talking about dealing with grief in the book and how you kept going to Nasia's grave, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel like every African, or at least every African mother, it reminded me of a conversation that I've had with my parents, or at least with a few people, how, in our culture, we tend to nurture the dead. Not that is a bad thing, but it's just, we have that guilt, right? That, oh my God, if I don't keep going, it would look like I just abandoned them and stuff like that. And this was when I really had a different perspective about, what you wrote and what you experienced and why you decided to stop going to Nasia's grave. I mean, I also underlined that, but I don't really want to read that out. But I think you had mentioned 1 Thessalonians 4 verse 13, so people can reference that. I just wanted to add that actually stood out to me because, I've always had this guilt, like, okay, what if my mom or dad passes? Like, where do we bury them? Like, I don't want to I don't want to let go. I want to keep them close and stuff like that. I mean, I've always had like this back and forth with my mom, like maybe we should just cremate and put in the house so that we have, I mean, I honestly don't mind. And I told her, I'm like, if I pass, just cremate me. Like, it's not like I don't want to be, I just don't spend money. You know how we go all lavish and stuff like that. And that's another thing, giving honorary burials, which is not bad, but some people get in debt to bury the dead. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me, so, but, I've gone to those extremes. Like, I want to cremate you and just put you in a shrine, like create a shrine or something and just have you there. And, but letting go too kind of helps, and it helps our mind, our psyche. And it's also something that, like you had stated in the Bible, that encouraged us to, let those people rest in glory and, focus on the life that we have. I don't know if there's anything additional that you want to add to that, which will also help people who are grieving.
Like you said, once they read the book, hopefully they'll get the full picture of it. But I don't know if I'm trying to buttress a point or really add to it, but I'm saying it from one who did all that stuff. So I once was in that position as well, with that mindset because of culture, how I was raised and what I saw, and even coming to the US as well, the funeral homes. Now we're talking, I just even realized they stopped sending that out, maybe because we just have stopped going there. But Memorial Day and all these things, they'll send stuff out like, like a reminder, I guess. So you often see people, going to do stuff like that. And I'm not, like I said, people are at different stages of grief. So I respect where everybody's at. But what I tell people is don't be careful about being stuck. Don't let the enemy leave you somewhere for so many years. You should not mourn for so long. Yeah. Okay. And I feel like doing stuff like that, at least for me, I thought every time I went there was not a day I did not shed a tear. I mean, I'm telling you, every single day, whether it's on my way back from work or my way to work, and like you're saying, that guilt, it's like, oh my gosh, I've left this poor baby alone. I haven't visited her today and stuff like that. And that one day that I explained in the book, it was almost like, it wasn't an audible voice, but I could hear it from within. Like, it was so strong. And it was a conversation that was back and forth with the Holy Spirit. Like, why are you doing this? Why are you putting yourself through this? Do you know, where is she? And all these questions. And I'm like, Lord, she's with you. So why the torture, Yeah. And I believe if I did not have that moment, I still probably would have been doing that, So I had that encounter. And so it doesn't even matter. It was a personal encounter. And so even if somebody tries to convince me, I just can't. And I don't feel bad. It's been like, I don't even know the last time, for all I care, grass or whatever should have cried. Of course, the people clean it. I'm just saying, all those flowers and all those things, it's just, she's in heaven. In heaven. Yeah. So there's no need. Yeah. Sometimes we get trapped into doing things that we just see people doing. Yeah. And, whether out of tradition. Okay, why are you doing it? Have you even taken a step back to really ask yourself, this thing I'm doing, and in everything, why am I doing it? What's the rationale behind doing it? And then maybe at that point, you really see that, hey, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, when I look at, I really haven't, lost anyone who is really close to me. So I can't really speak a lot on that. But if I'm even speaking on anything, it's going to be more about what I've seen people doing. And like you said, like what people, expect you to do, or what the society determines that should be done, But I mean, this is probably going to be a sensitive question, but like, will you ever, or this is to both of you, by the way, will you ever think there will be a need to ever go there again, or maybe not necessarily as frequently?
For me, I'd say no, because if I haven't been there in 6+ years, I really don't see a need, unless and this is, of course, it's never going to happen. The funeral home calls and says, hey, you guys, we're going to build or whatever. You need to come take remains. And they start calling families to come, But then is that saying, if somebody, let's say, like my parents had come at the time, stuff was still fresh in my memory. And I was still dealing with a lot. Mm-hmm. So when people would come and visit, they want to see where they were buried. And Victor would always go. Yeah. Because I just did not want to be around there. Mm-hmm. But let's say in the future, if somebody comes and wants me to do it now, would I do it? I probably would, just to say, hey, this is the spot, mm-hmm. if they want to see the tombstone or anything like that, I'll do it just because, maybe they were gone for 10 years, they haven't seen it and they want to, go see it. But if somebody lives around me and feels like, okay, this kids were so dear to me and maybe they want to stop, where, they gave us a map, where it's at. If you want to be going there every day or once a week or whatever, knock yourself out. Yeah. I'm not going to do that.
Right.
So, yeah.
All right. Thank you for sharing that. Now, let's, talk about baby Eliana, because she went through the same thing that, baby Nasia went through. Victor, this question is directed at you. So when you got that answer from God, right? Like you said, what was going through your mind after that? Like, how did you take everything that happened again? Because I would imagine at this point you were past the stage of being numb. And how worse can it get, right? So how did you handle that internally? I know you guys did not really talk about it, but what was really going through your mind?
Not much. Because at that point, Eliana was just like a normal kid to me. She was just like every other child. She pretty much was like Jessie in our eyes, because she had her way of communicating. She couldn't speak, but she had a way of communicating. I would take her to every doctor's appointment, like I would have been taking Jessie. Mm-hmm. And unlike Nasia, she was home with us. So when I finally was able to get that revelation from God that this is not about you, you need to stop blaming yourself. Mm-hmm. Then I started looking at her like I'd been looking at Jessie. She was just a normal kid that needed to be clothed, needed to have a bath, needed to eat, needed to be treated like a child. Yeah. And so at that point in time, that is all I did. I gave her all the love that she needed, and she responded back in kind fashion. She had a way of telling us that, hey, you people are neglecting me. I need some TLC, and we did give that to her. So from that point moving onward, Eliana was just a baby girl. Yeah. And she was, I believe both of us, and everybody who came here, everybody who came to the house, because she spent most of the time in the bedroom, but everybody who came to the house knew that Jessie was not an only child in the house, because we all, even though she pretty much was not, she's out of sight most of the time, but we made everybody understand that we had Jessie and Eliana. So she was just a normal kid to me at that time. Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Carine, I know you also elaborated, a lot of your feelings in the book and, your own experiences. And one thing that actually stood out to me was, when she was her health was getting worse, and you were begging God to take her, and, because you didn't want her to leave like that. It's kind of, sorry. It's kind of funny because it's not funny actually, but it was a bit coincidental, because that's actually what my mom was saying when my brother was born, and it just made me sympathize with, mothers who are going through that, because it's you feel like you want to help the child, but you're helpless. There's nothing you can really do about it. And, to see a child who doesn't deserve that kind of life, keep fighting and struggling, it kind of hits home for me too, with respect to my mom. And, my brother, his prognosis was that he wasn't even going to make it past 5 years or so, but he's 30 years. now, even though it's extremely difficult to take care of him right now, because he's really big and he's heavy, and my parents are getting old. I'm not trying to cry, sorry. I kind of sympathize with you on that, because I may never know how that felt, but as a sibling, I can definitely sympathize with you, because it's not easy. It's not easy at all, and to know that she eventually passed, even though it was, for the better of her life, because nobody really wanted her to live like that, and nobody really wants to see her, suffer like that, but at the end of the day, it's still sad. You still lost a child, and the pain is no different than losing a healthy child, probably even worse, because the child really never had a chance, to live a healthy life. It must have really been very, very challenging. And to see that both of you actually weathered the storm, it just gives me hope. It hopefully should give every other couple out there struggling with maybe a sick child or, the loss of a child, hope as well. So thank you so much for sharing that. That was really hard. Thank you so much for sharing that. Both of y'all's story reminds me of the story of Job, losing everything, but still acknowledging that, God is his redeemer, and that God is still there for him, regardless of what every other person was saying and putting things into his ear, and that actually brings me to a different experience that you guys may have faced, and that is people talking, Sorry, I just had to transition like that. I mean, I know you wrote about that, Carine, and I definitely would imagine people talking. If my parents had to listen to people talking, my brother would not have been alive today, because one person actually, at that time, my parents were very, very, very desperate for a solution. They were Christians, but they were just desperate for anything that could help. And someone recommended them to this traditional doctor who said my brother was a witch or a wizard, and recommended to put him by the side of some river, and he was going to turn into a snake and go away. If my parents actually listened to him, my brother would not have been alive today. And I know so many people spoke into your ears, not necessarily telling you what to do, but, not necessarily telling you where the problem was, or maybe they did, but people were probably telling you what to do, what not to do, or why you're doing it this way, or what this and that. Can you just say, let's try to be raw a little bit. Can you just say a few things that certain people said, just to give the audience a perspective on what, people go through? I'm trying to get people to be more sensitive to, when asking questions. Can you just tell us a few random things that people said, and also how you just handled the whole situation of people talking and things like that?
Personally, there were a few things that I heard that people said. Very few said it to my face, like when Eliana passed, one of them said that wasn't that baby. Let her go to wherever she came from.
My God. This
was somebody that I carried in my womb. So, and then others said I had done this or that in my past. And I'm like, what past? Or I had to go, I don't know, to which village. It's just, and our African community, somebody had actually made a statement that if you don't, they said it in Pidgin, say if you never touch bitter leaf, your hands, then no go bitter, something like that. Which in other words is trying to say whatever I was dealing with, my hand is in it. So, and even if people, I know stuff was said amongst others, then, but I think I made my life in such a way that my attitude was almost like back off.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, and I did that on purpose because I did not even want people to approach me on that issue. Some of the things that people not necessarily said, but suggested, it was in good faith. People they're looking for help for you. I didn't take offense at it, but if I hadn't been, and this is with Eliana, at that point, keep in mind, my faith was growing steadily, and some people had approached me to take her to all kinds of prophets. And this is nothing against prophets. I'm not saying, but I'm just saying to some prophets or some areas where I know my spirit did not even, the spirit bears witness. My spirit did not, there wasn't a pull, to go there, even if I could. But I, of course, out of politeness, I had to be very diplomatic on how, thank you, we'll work on it, but I knew for a fact that I wasn't going to go anywhere. But some of the things were very, very hurtful. And, I'm glad you're doing this. I don't know if we're going to get to that, but like you're saying, our community needs to do better to be sensitive to people who are dealing with issues. And when I say issues, whether my kind of issues that I've gone through, people who, whether divorcees or people taking care of special needs kids, just, you don't have to say everything that comes to your mind. Especially when the person is around. Just be sensitive. We're not saying walk on eggshells, but just, don't be walking around somebody who's trying to have a baby and say, go born your own, or, it's too much, I don't know if we're going to address, I don't want to jump ahead.
No.
Address it.
That's fine. We can address it at any time because it's very important.
So, or things like you see somebody who's single, and even if they're 50 years old, you start saying, and they don't even say it in a nice way. Sometimes somebody can call you and say, where my sister, what's going on? Maybe I've been praying for you. Is this man? But you see some who say, what are you waiting for? Go married or some kind of things like that. Can people marry themselves? There are some people who choose to never get married, but there are others who sincerely, they really want to get married. But there's nobody yet, or I'm trusting God for the fruit of the womb, and you keep throwing shades around me, and, we've been married X number of years. Don't even ask me any questions. If you're praying for me, pray for me in your closet, in the privacy of your home. Don't come and be touching my stomach. You don't know whether the day you're touching my stomach was the day I had a miscarriage. People need to stop. They need to stop.
That's true.
People deal with so much. This is an issue that touches me to the core. There's so many hurting women out there. And there's so many hurting women. You don't know the ones that are on IVF. They want babies so badly.
That's it for today. Thank you for listening to our show. If you want to participate in the show or find out more helpful resources, then visit www.livingafricanpodcast.com for more information, or email us at hello@livingafricanpodcast.com. Also, don't forget to connect with us on all social media platforms at Living African Podcast. You can also connect with Njoh directly on Facebook or Instagram at Njoh Farmbard. Thanks again for listening, and let's not forget to be more understanding and nicer to one another.